You're watching a Highwire Media podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Dead Reckoning podcast. As always, I'm your host, Larry Lease. And on today's episode, this is probably the most requested topic I've ever had, even mentioned by my friends. I can't even count how many times people have asked me to cover this one, and honestly, for a long time, I didn't really want to. It just seemed so big, too much, too insane, and I figured, what's the point? It's already been covered by so many other people, and a lot of it just seems like political mudslinging more than anything else. But then I started looking into it, actually researching it, and once I did, I realized there was something compelling there. Not because I think it's all true, spoiler alert, I don't, but because of how far it's spread, like how long it's lasted, and how deeply it's ingrained itself into American culture, or political culture. And I'm talking, of course, about the Clinton body count. If you've never heard of it before, the Clinton body count is the idea that Bill and Hillary Clinton have been connected to a suspiciously high number of deaths over the course of their political careers. Friends, associates, staffers, journalists, even bodyguards. People who knew too much, got too close, or became a liability. And then, conveniently, they died. Accidents, suicides, plane crashes, robberies gone wrong. The theory suggests that the Clintons, or someone close to them, orchestrated these deaths to protect themselves, to silence whistleblowers, or to prevent damaging information from coming to the light. Now, to be clear, there's no hard evidence that the Clintons have had anyone killed. None. But that hasn't stopped the theory from spreading. In fact, it's only grown over time, especially with the rise of the internet and social media. And every time someone connected to them dies under unusual circumstances, the theory gets revived all over again. So in this episode, I'm going to break it all down. Where it started, who's on the list, which deaths are the most suspicious, and which are honestly kind of ridiculous. I'll tell you what we know, what's been debunked, and where the truth might lie. And we're going to start at the beginning with a woman named Linda Thompson in a document that would kick off one of the most persistent political conspiracy theories of our time. To tackle a topic this massive, I've decided to go case by case, death by death, focusing on the most notable and suspicious entries. Some will be discussed in detail, others only briefly. I'm not going to overwhelm you with every single name that's ever appeared on one of these lists, because frankly, a lot of them are a stretch. But we'll focus on the ones that have truly captured public attention. Now, I'm not going to waste time introducing Bill and Hillary Clinton. We all know who they are. Bill Clinton, former president of the United States, governor of Arkansas, licensed attorney. Hillary Clinton, former secretary of state, U.S. senator, first lady, and Democratic presidential candidate. Together, they're often seen as the ultimate power couple in American politics, loved by some, loathed by others, and always controversial. They've been surrounded by scandals for decades: financial, political, personal. Bill's impeachment in the 90s, Hillary's email controversy, the allegations surrounding the Clinton Foundation. The point is, there is no strangers to suspicion or conspiracy. And that's what makes the Clinton body count so compelling to so many people. So where did this theory even come from? It all started with a woman named Linda Thompson, an attorney from Indianapolis. In 1993, she published a paper titled The Clinton Body Count: Coincidence or the Kiss of Death? It was an essay that listed 34 people by name who had allegedly died under suspicious circumstances while connected to Bill Clinton in some way. Now, to be clear, Linda didn't outright accuse the Clintons of murder. She was a lawyer. She knew better than to make direct accusations without evidence. But what she did do was raise a lot of eyebrows. In her paper, she wrote, quote, "This administration seems to be plagued with an inordinate number of suicides, plane crashes, one-person fatal accidents, and unexplained deaths. The following is a summary of the deaths of people who have died. None of them from natural causes who are connected to Bill Clinton." And that's how it started. She didn't claim to have proof. She didn't say, "Here's the smoking gun." What she did say was, "Here's a list of people who are dead. A lot of them knew Bill Clinton. Doesn't that seem strange to you?" And that was it. That's all it took. Linda herself even admitted she didn't believe the Clintons had personally killed anyone. Instead, she suggested that someone behind the scenes, someone who wanted the Clintons in power, might have been eliminating threats on their behalf. And with that vague, unsettling suggestion, the seed was planted. From there, the theory gained traction. One of the first politicians to take it seriously was Congressman William Dannemeyer of California. He shortened Linda's list to 24 names and submitted it to Congress for review. Meanwhile, the media, especially outlets opposed to the Clintons, latched onto the story. Mainstream news outlets were careful not to make direct accusations, but they still gave the story oxygen. Tabloids, on the other hand, had no such reservations. They ran headlines suggesting that Bill Clinton had blood on his hands. And some people genuinely believed he was sneaking out of the White House to kill people himself. That's how wild it got. Of course, that's not how powerful people operate. They don't carry out hits personally. If anything like that were to happen, it would be done through layers of deniability. That's how conspiracy theorists like to imagine it anyway. But the theory had taken on a life of its own. Political commentators like Rush Limbaugh and religious figures like Pat Robertson pushed it further. Names were added, the list grew. People who died of cancer, car accidents, heart attacks. If they had any connection to the Clintons, they were fair game. But one name stood out more than any other. One case became the cornerstone of the Clinton body count conspiracy. Even the media recognized it as the one that seemed the most suspicious. That name was Vincent Foster. When it comes to the Clinton body count, no name gets brought up more than Vincent Foster. He's often referred to as the starting point for the most serious accusations. For a lot of people, his death just never added up. So who was he? Vince Foster was a longtime friend of the Clintons. He worked with Hillary at the Rose Law Firm in Arkansas and later joined the White House as Deputy White House Counsel under Clinton. He wasn't just a colleague, he was part of their inner circle. And on July 20th, 1993, just months into Bill's first term as president, Vince Foster was found dead in Fort Macy Park, a secluded area in Virginia, not far from Washington, D.C. He was lying on the ground, a .38 caliber revolver in his hand, a bullet wound through the roof of his mouth, and no one else around. The police quickly ruled it a suicide, but from the very beginning, people had questions. At the time of his death, Foster had been under immense pressure. He was involved in a growing political scandal known as Travelgate, a controversy involving the firing of several long-serving employees in the White House Travel Office. These were people who'd worked under multiple presidents, both Democrat and Republican. Their sudden termination raised eyebrows, especially when it was discovered that they were replaced by Clinton allies and campaign donors. Officially, the firings were justified by claims of financial mismanagement. But many people, especially the media, weren't buying it. They saw it as nepotism, and it made for some ugly headlines. Foster, as White House counsel, was right in the middle of it, and the scandal hit him hard. Colleagues said he felt ashamed, humiliated, and was worried about testifying before Congress. Some said he even considered resigning. The day before his death, he reportedly spoke to his doctor about depression. The signs were all there. So when his body was found in the park with the gun in his hand and no signs of struggle, it seemed like an open and shut case of suicide. Except conspiracy theorists weren't convinced. It started with one small detail. A police officer at the scene, Major Robert Hines, told the media that he didn't see an exit wound on the back of Foster's head. Given the size of the weapon and the angle of the shot, many found that hard to believe. They thought if there was no exit wound, maybe he had shot himself at all. But later reports confirmed there was an exit wound, and Hines had simply misspoken during a chaotic media scrum. He was under pressure, dealing with reporters, and said something inaccurate. It happens, but the damage was done. The seed of doubt had been planted. Then came the suicide note. About a week after Foster's death, the torn up note was found in his briefcase. It had been ripped into 28 pieces and looked like a mix between a resignation letter and a final statement. It read in part, quote, "I was not meant for the job or the spotlight of public life in Washington. Here, ruining people is considered sport." It sounded like a man overwhelmed by the pressure, but here's where things got strange again. 3 independent handwriting experts examined a photocopy of the note and claimed it was a forgery. They pointed to things like hesitation marks in unusual places, letters that required multiple strokes, inconsistencies with Foster's normal writing style, no fingerprint evidence on the note at all. One even noted that a single N had 4 hesitation marks, despite being written in 3 strokes. They argued this showed someone had tried to imitate Foster's writing, but lacked the skill to do it convincingly. For conspiracy theorists, this was the smoking gun. If the note was forged, then Foster didn't write it. And if he didn't write it, then maybe he didn't kill himself either. To make it worse, the only clear fingerprint found on the letter belonged to Bernard Nussbaum, the White House counsel, one of Clinton's closest legal advisors. That was enough for theorists to scream cover up. Add to that rumors of blonde hairs found on Foster's jacket, red carpet fibers, and even reports of semen in his underwear, and suddenly the death of Vince Foster turns out to be a twisted mystery involving secret mistresses, political sabotage, and perhaps even murder. But here's the thing, it all started falling apart under real scrutiny. The note that the experts analyzed, it wasn't the original. It was a low-quality photocopy, which made it impossible to assess fine penmanship. When the FBI and forensic document examiners got access to the original note, they concluded that it wasn't forged. The hesitation marks and extra strokes, likely just signs of a shaky hand, a man in deep distress, writing what may have been the last words of his life. And as for the lack of fingerprints, Foster had reportedly worn gloves while handling documents, common practice for lawyers. The torn state of the note could have made fingerprint recovery difficult anyways. Even the blonde hair and red fibers were explained. Foster had been working around others in the office, and forensic transfer is incredibly easy in shared spaces. As for the semen, that's never been confirmed. It was tabloid rumor, repeated enough times that people began to take it as fact. After multiple official investigations, including by the FBI, Congress, and independent counsels, the final ruling was this, quote, Vincent Foster committed suicide by gunshot in Fort Marcy Park. There is no evidence of foul play. But even today, many people still don't believe it. The Vince Foster case became foundational to the Clinton body count. It's the death that gets cited again and again, usually by people who've never read the report, never studied the autopsies, and never questioned the evidence being passed around on conspiracy blogs. It's a classic example of how a handful of anomalies, magnified by media noise and political agendas, can fuel suspicion for decades. If Vince Foster's death became the intellectual backbone of the Clinton body count, then the case of Don Henry and Kevin Ives was its emotional core. Because this one didn't involve lawyers or political aides, it involved teenagers. This case goes all the way back to August 23, 1987. It was just after 4 a.m., and a Union Pacific freight train was barreling down the tracks near the town of Alexander, Arkansas, headed towards Little Rock. The engineer sitting in the cab noticed something horrifying. 2 boys lying motionless on the tracks about 300 feet ahead. He immediately hit the brakes, blasted the horn, tried everything to stop that train. But it was moving at over 50 miles an hour, pulling more than 6,000 tons of freight. There was no time. The train hit them, and the boys were killed instantly. When police arrived at the scene, they identified the victims as Kevin Ives and Don Henry. Close friends, local boys, good kids. Nearby, police found a flashlight and a .22 caliber hunting rifle, suggesting the two had gone out into the woods that night to do a little spotlight hunting. Common, though illegal, local activity where hunters shine a bright light into the trees to spot deer. The next day, the state medical examiner, a man named Dr. Fahmy Malak, conducted autopsies on both boys and ruled their deaths accidental. He claimed the boys had been under the influence of marijuana, specifically that they had smoked the equivalent of 20 joints each, making them so high that they laid down on the tracks and simply passed out, unaware of the oncoming train. The official ruling? Death by misadventure. But their families didn't buy it, not for a second. They knew their sons. They knew they weren't reckless or stupid. And 20 joints? That would incapacitate just about anyone. Not to mention, toxicology experts later disputed that number entirely. So a year later, the families pushed for a second autopsy, conducted out of state by 2 independent medical examiners. What they found was deeply disturbing. Kevin Ives' skull had been crushed before the train hit him. Don Henry had been stabbed in the back. These weren't stoners who fell asleep on the tracks. These were 2 boys who had been attacked, possibly murdered, and then laid on the track to make their deaths look like an accident. The new ruling, homicide. That should have been the moment everything changed, but instead it only raised more questions. The case went nowhere for years. Witnesses died, suspects disappeared, files were misplaced, and the man overseeing it all, Prosecutor Dan Harmon, a man who would later be arrested and convicted, not for murder, but for drug trafficking, racketeering, extortion, and witness tampering. He was found to be actively obstructing the investigation into the boy's death, the very investigation he was in charge of. One witness, a man named Keith McCaskill, was stabbed to death shortly after giving a tip about Harmon. Another man, Jeff Rhodes, was found shot in the head, burned, and dumped at a dump site just days after claiming to have information about the boy's death. At this point, people started talking, not just about a murder cover-up, but about a drug operation. The theory went like this. There had been illegal drug drops happening in rural Arkansas, often at night from low-flying planes. These were part of a larger trafficking network, allegedly protected by law enforcement, possibly even state officials. The night they died, Don Henry and Kevin Ives accidentally witnessed one of these drops. Someone saw them, and someone silenced them. The bodies were laid on the tracks to destroy evidence. The train was just the cleanup crew. So how does this connect to the Clintons? Well, at the time, Bill Clinton was the governor of Arkansas. Conspiracy theorists believe that not only was he aware of the drug smuggling operation, that he may have enabled or protected it either directly or indirectly. They claim that the state's drug task force was intentionally kept weak, that local prosecutors like Dan Harmon were shielded from scrutiny, and that the medical examiner who botched the original autopsy had been personally protected by Clinton. And the truth is, there is evidence that Clinton defended the medical examiner even after multiple botched autopsies, not just this one. Clinton claimed he was trying to avoid destabilizing the state's criminal justice system. Critics said he was covering for someone who covered up a double homicide. And that's why Don Henry and Kevin Ives are permanently cemented in the Clinton body count narrative. 2 kids, dead on the tracks, prosecutor turned drug lord, corrupt coroner, and a silent governor. Do I think Clinton personally had them killed? No. But do I believe there was a cover-up? Absolutely. Something dark happened that night, and the people who should have uncovered the truth, they did everything they could to bury it. We've covered political suicide, a double homicide, and a scandalous business collapse. Now let's turn to the skies, because one of the strangest aspects of the Clinton body count is just how many people connected to the Clintons died in plane crashes. Let's start with one of the more high-profile cases, Victor Raiser II. In the early 90s, Victor was a national finance co-chairman for Bill Clinton's presidential campaign. He was a major fundraiser, key player in the money pipeline that helped Clinton get to the White House. On July 30th, 1992, Raiser, his son, and 4 others boarded a single-engine plane in Alaska. They were flying from Bristol Bay Lodge, one of the most exclusive fishing lodges in the world, to a remote camp near the Togiak River. Weather conditions had seemed fine when they took off, but shortly into the flight, the pilot encountered low clouds and poor visibility over a mountainous area. While trying to reverse course, the plane stalled, lost altitude, and crashed into a mountain. The pilot was the only survivor. Everyone else, including Victor and his son, died. At first, the crash seemed like a tragic accident, but once Raiser's name appeared on Lyndon Thompson's original body count list, things escalated. Suddenly, people began speculating. Was the crash really caused by bad weather, or was it sabotage? Some even claimed the pilot may have been a hired assassin sent out to take out Raiser because he knew too much. That theory doesn't hold up under basic logic. What kind of assassin kills 5 people, including himself, to take out a campaign fundraiser? Spoiler, he did, because he survived. And by all accounts, the crash was consistent with pilot error during bad weather. Still, Raiser's name stayed on the list, and other aviation-related deaths followed. Just over a year later, on September 10th, 1993, another crash occurred, this time killing Dr. Stanley Hurd. Hurd was the chairman of the National Chiropractic Healthcare Advisory Committee, and he had served as a personal chiropractor to the Clinton family, including both Bill and Hillary's mothers. Hurd had just attended a meeting at the White House to discuss healthcare policy. According to reports, the meeting hadn't gone well. He was frustrated with the administration's position. Shortly after leaving D.C., he boarded a private plane with his attorney, Steve Dixon, to fly home. But the plane caught fire in midair, and both men died in the crash. That alone might not raise eyebrows. Planes crash, fires happen. But then it came out that this wasn't even their original plane. Their usual aircraft had developed mechanical problems, and they had rented this one last minute. Add that to the fact that Heard had just left the White House, was rumored to be frustrated with the Clintons' policies, and had access to the Clintons personally, and well, the conspiracy theorists had a field day. They claimed it was all too convenient, too many coincidences, too many people with access to the Clintons ending up dead in small planes. Then there's Jerry Parks. Parks wasn't a pilot. He wasn't on a plane, but his death often gets lumped in with this set of mysterious events. So it's worth talking about here. Parks was a private investigator and head of security for Clinton's 92 campaign headquarters in Little Rock. A few months after the campaign ended on September 26, 1993, Parks was gunned down while driving home from a Mexican restaurant. Another car pulled up beside him and someone opened fire with a 9mm pistol. He was hit 10 times. It looked like a professional hit. There was no robbery, no theft, just execution. After his death, Jerry Parks' son Gary came forward with explosive allegations. He claimed that his father had been gathering damaging evidence on Bill Clinton: photos, files, financial statements, even witness statements. According to Gary, his father was planning to blackmail the Clintons. Shortly after his murder, their home was broken into, and all the files, everything his father had been working on, was gone. Gary also appeared on a straight-to-VHS documentary called The Clinton Chronicles, where he described what he believed was a cover-up at the highest level. Was any of it true? There's no physical evidence of these alleged files, no backups, no hidden copies, just Gary's word. And while it's certainly suspicious that Parks was gunned down mafia style, we can't say definitively why or by whom, but his death remains unsolved to this day. And like others, became another name added to the list. Now let me pause and say this. Aviation accidents happen. Private planes crash a lot more than commercial flights. Weather is unpredictable. Mechanical failures occur. And sometimes, tragically, people die. But when these people have connection to a sitting U.S. president, and when there are multiple cases within a few years, people start drawing lines, even when those lines are completely imaginary. That's how conspiracy theories thrive. They don't rely on evidence, they rely on patterns, or the illusion of them. And sometimes, those illusions are very convincing. Next up is a case that perfectly combines political scandal, financial fraud, and a mysterious prison death. It's the story of James McDougal, a name forever linked to the Clintons through the now infamous Whitewater scandal. Let's go back to the late 70s. Bill and Hillary Clinton partnered with James and his wife Susan to form the Whitewater Development Corporation. Their plan: to build a vacation home community in Flippin, Arkansas, targeting wealthy clients from Chicago and Detroit who wanted scenic second homes in the Ozarks. They bought 230 acres of land for just $23,000. Pretty good deal even back then. The Clintons and the McDougals each took equal shares in the project. It started with optimism. They even built a model home. But soon after, the economy tanked, interest rates skyrocketed, and the project stalled. Nobody was buying. After a few years, the whole thing was scrapped. They liquidated their assets and dissolved the partnership. When all was said and done, the Clintons reportedly lost about 69,000. The McDougals, even more. It should have ended there, but it didn't. Fast forward to the 80s, Bill Clinton climbs the political ladder. He's governor again. He's headed for national prominence. Meanwhile, James's luck continues to spiral. In an effort to recover financially, he buys two banks: Madison Bank and Trust and Madison Savings and Loan. He starts financing new real estate ventures, including one called Castle Grande. But here's the problem. He uses funds from his own banks to finance these deals, a big no-no in banking regulations. Soon the whole thing implodes. Madison Savings and Loan collapses, and the federal government has to step in to clean it up. Taxpayers are left with a $73 million payout bill, and that's when the investigation starts. Naturally, when the feds start digging into Madison's financial records, they stumble across the earlier Whitewater partnership. And now they're asking, did the Clintons benefit from fraudulent banking practices? Were they complicit in any of this? The answer, according to every official investigation, no. Yes, the Clintons were passive investors in a failed land deal. There was no evidence they were involved in or even aware of the fraudulent activities that followed. Still, the media went wild. Whitewater dominated headlines. Clintons, and it didn't take long before it evolved from a local banking scandal to a national obsession. By the 90s, the Clintons were in the White House, and James and Susan were under indictment. They were charged with bank fraud, mail fraud, conspiracy, and more. Susan refused to testify against the Clintons and ended up serving time. James, however, took a different path. He agreed to cooperate with prosecutors. In fact, he was set to testify in an entirely separate investigation, one involving illegal campaign fundraising that allegedly tied back to the Clintons. And just before that testimony, James died. He was being held at a federal prison medical facility in Texas. He had a known heart condition and was supposed to take regular medication, but reports say he refused his meds that night, claiming the side effects made him feel groggy and confused. That night, he suffered a massive heart attack. There was no defibrillator nearby. There was no immediate medical intervention. By the time someone checked his cell, he was already gone. To many, it looked like a tragic medical failure, but the conspiracy theories, it was too convenient. Here was a man with deep personal knowledge of the Clintons' financial dealings, a man set to testify before Congress, a man who had already begun cooperating, and now he was dead. They didn't buy it. Of course, multiple autopsies confirmed that McDougal died of natural causes. His heart had been failing for years. His health had been declining. But like with Vince Foster, that didn't matter, because the timing was enough to keep the theory alive. Some believe the Clintons had arranged for McDougal's medical neglect. Others thought he'd been silenced by injection or some other spy movie tactic. No evidence was ever produced. But his name was quickly added to the Clinton body count list, and for many people, that was enough. Let's be real for a second. Prison deaths are not uncommon, especially among older inmates with chronic health issues. Medical care in federal facilities is notoriously underfunded and inconsistent. But when the inmate is connected to the sitting president of the United States, when he's on the verge of testifying about political corruption and then suddenly dies in custody, that's all it takes for people to say, they got him. Even if they didn't get anybody. By the late 90s, the Clinton body count conspiracy had already been circulating for years. It had moved from fringe newsletters and talk radio to tabloid TV and cable news. What really gave it new life, what turned it from a whispered suspicion into a viral phenomenon, was the internet. Message boards, email chains, online forums. Suddenly, every death, every accident, every overdose, or plane crash involving anyone even loosely tied to the Clintons became content, fuel for a growing fire. And as more names were added, the original list started to lose all proportion. It stopped being about suspicious circumstances and started being about association. People didn't even have to die under mysterious conditions anymore. They just had to die, period, and have once worked in the same state as the Clintons. Take Seth Rich, for example. He was a young DNC staffer shot and killed in D.C. in July 2016, during what police said was a botched robbery. His wallet, phone, and watch were still on him, but investigators believe the killer was interrupted and fled the scene. No witnesses, no leads, a tragedy. The conspiracy world wasn't interested in facts. They were interested in connections. Because Seth worked for the DNC, and because WikiLeaks released hacked DNC emails that same year, a rumor began to spread. Seth Rich was the leaker, and the Clintons had him killed to keep him quiet. This theory took off fast, amplified by internet forums, Twitter accounts, and even some mainstream political pundits. The only problem? There was no evidence Seth Rich had anything to do with the leaks. WikiLeaks never confirmed it. U.S. intelligence agencies said the emails were stolen by Russian hackers. Seth's family begged people to stop using his death as political ammo. Didn't matter. Once a name hits the Clinton body count list, it sticks, whether it belongs there or not. Then there's the big one, Jeffrey Epstein. We all know how this goes. Epstein was a convicted sex offender, accused of trafficking underage girls to powerful men, billionaires, politicians, royalty. He had connections to everyone. Donald Trump, Bill Gates, Prince Andrew, Bill Clinton. Clinton had flown on Epstein's private jet multiple times, though he denied ever visiting Epstein's private island or knowing about his crimes. Then, in 2019, Epstein was arrested again. And just weeks before he was set to stand trial and potentially name names, he was found dead in his jail cell, hanging by a bedsheet. No cameras working, guards asleep, autopsy results questioned. And the moment that news broke, everyone said it. Clinton killed him, except people on the other side said Trump killed him. Didn't matter which side you were on, everyone believed someone killed Epstein. The idea that he committed suicide, to this day, most Americans don't buy it. It became a meme, a punchline, a symbol of everything corrupt and untouchable in elite society. And because Clinton's name had appeared in flight logs, that was enough. One more body on the count. Even though no evidence has ever emerged tying Clinton to Epstein's death or to any of the crimes Epstein committed. At this point, the body count has ballooned to dozens upon dozens of names. Some are legitimate tragedies, some are deeply suspicious, and some are complete fabrications. We're talking about journalists who died of cancer, bodyguards who died in car accidents, even people who are only rumored to have known the Clintons. And in the minds of conspiracy theories, it all adds up to one conclusion. The Clintons kill people, and they keep getting away with it. But it doesn't actually add up. Let's talk about that. So what do we do with all this? We've looked at the key deaths, the plane crashes, the suicides, the scandals. We've examined high-profile names like Vince Foster, Seth Rich, James McDougal, Jeffrey Epstein, and we've seen how the Clinton body count has ballooned over the years. From a list of 24 names in the 80s or in the 90s to dozens more in the internet age. So the obvious question becomes, is there any truth to it? So let's break that down. First, have people died under unusual or suspicious circumstances while connected in some way to the Clintons? Yes, without a doubt. But that's not unusual. Powerful people know a lot of other people. Politicians, especially those in the national spotlight, have thousands of contacts over the course of a career. So statistically speaking, some of those people are going to die in tragic, messy, or unexplained ways. Now, if there had been hard evidence, actual forensic proof that the Clintons orchestrated even one of those deaths, that would be a very different conversation. But so far, there has been none. And in the more suspicious cases, like Vince Foster, James, multiple investigations were carried out, autopsies were done, congressional committees reviewed them, independent counsels, FBI agents, forensic experts, and still, no charges, no evidence, no proof of foul play. But conspiracy theories don't run on evidence. They run on emotion. And this one taps into some very deep emotions: distrust of government, resentment of political elites, fear of corruption at the highest levels, and yes, for many people, a deep hatred of Hillary Clinton. Whether it's fair or not, Hillary has become a kind of lightning rod in American culture. For some, she represents everything wrong with the system. So when something bad happens to someone remotely in her orbit, people are ready, eager, and even to assume the worst. Doesn't help that real government conspiracies have happened. Iran-Contra, MK-Ultra, Watergate. So when people hear about the Clinton body count, it's easy to think, yeah, that sounds like something they'd do, even if the evidence isn't there. Let me be clear. Do I think Bill or Hillary Clinton have personally ordered assassinations? No. Do I think they've ever benefited from the silence or disappearance of people who knew too much? That's harder to answer. I think it's possible they've been involved in cover-ups, in damage control, and keeping things out of the public eye the way many powerful people do. But the idea that there's some murder-for-hire operation working behind the scenes to eliminate Clinton enemies, that's fantasy, political fan fiction. It's not reality. And yet the theory won't die. Why? Because it's useful. It's a powerful weapon in the culture war. It's a rallying cry, a shortcut, a way to delegitimize political opponents without having to argue policy or platform. It's also fun in a dark way. Conspiracy theories give people a sense of control, a way to understand a chaotic world. They offer villains and victims, heroes and plots in a time when real life often feels senseless and complicated. So where does that leave us? At the end of the day, the Clinton body count is less about the Clintons, more about us. Our fear, our distrust, and our desire to see patterns where none exist. That doesn't mean we shouldn't ask questions. We should. We should always question power. But we also have to be responsible with the answers we accept and the stories we choose to believe. Because when we blindly accept conspiracy theories without proof, we don't just hurt the people we're accusing, we hurt the truth itself. And that is all we have on today's episode of the Dead Reckoning Show. Let me know your thoughts on the Clinton body count in the comment section below. Give us a thumbs up if you like the video. Hit that subscribe button down below. Hit the bell notification button so you don't miss another episode of the Dead Reckoning Show. Of course, if you want to support the channel, you can buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/LarryMLease. As always, your support helps the channel grow, upgrade equipment, bring in new hosts, and be able to take this show on the road. As always, thank you so much for watching and listening. We'll see you next time.